Happy 87th birthday to Your Holiness Dalai Lama. May you live for many, many, many years and have a healthy life so that we could all continue to benefit from your inspirations, your actions, your teachings, your examples that you have sustained us all through these years. And there are many more years that we're looking forward to being benefited likewise, so that we could all realize your aspiration and hope that you repose in us, in being able to realize, actualize our own inborn positive potential, and thus be able to see each other in a much, much positive, compassionate light. Once again, I would like to welcome you all and thank you for the opportunity to speak, and more particularly on this day, and that too at the BBC station. Yet, in its longer form, it is Bodhisattva broadcast, Bodhisattva breakfast corner. And so, what could be more apt than to be able to, than to get to speak on His Holiness, who is Bodhisattva incarnate. And I'll try to dwell a little bit, first by making you known, those of you very rarely so, maybe if you are not aware, there is an official website of His Holiness the Dalai Lama called dalailama.com, and that is a treasure trove to go to get oneself positive oriented whenever need be, and also for updated Bodhisattva activities that are extending all over the world, and that's an affecting and a very clear indication of how Bodhisattva, be he or she be a single person, wherever he or she may be stationed somewhere, and in this situation, maybe unable to physically move anywhere, yet how the activities radiate forth continuously without stop all over, and it's affecting, changing the lives of the people, animals, environment at this very moment as we are speaking. And I got some glimpses of that from a very close corner, having had the opportunity to serve as his so-called interpreter, translator, religious interpreter, translator, for 2.5 years, in the course of which I got to stand by him in front of a big, big crowd on under a canopy, and where there was no need at all for him, a translator like me, because his words speak much stronger, much forceful, and there are elements in there which wouldn't ordinarily come out, but comes out from him, that connects so well and richly to people. I would be just standing there and just faking that I'm doing something, but all I'm doing is showing myself standing. But in those occasions and other occasions, like on the tour, I got a very close view of his Bodhisattva-like qualities, like exuding every time. His whole being is permeated with, or you could call, all of his cells are permeated with, or has an extra element in it. Compassionate, or else you could call all of the elements within the cell, including mitochondria and etc., are all infused with compassion, and that exudes from his words, actions likewise. And there are certain slogans that stands out, that came out from him, which would be indicative of his Bodhisattva mindset and vision and expansion. Like we just heard in the guided meditation, kindness is my religion. If we take it seriously and pay attention to it, that really says a lot. And that really can be very, very transformative. And each one could have that. It's not just His Holiness owning it, just as it is his religion. Likewise, it could be all of ours. And in a way, we have gathered here with this aspiration that maybe be able to make that our religion. And once we've adopted that as our religion, maybe be able to pursue that religiously. We pursue something religiously which is not religion, something religious, unreligiously which is religion. So we have to, what we call religion, what we call our principle, our positive orientation, we should be able to see the depth, the breadth, value of it, and be able to pursue it, integrate it, and kind of really let it permeate our whole being, and kind of for which the potential is always with us. And that's what he reflects. And every time we see him, even during the tours, with so tight schedule, he would be so consistent, practical, yet very flexible, very kind, very giving, yet treating everyone, in the modern terms, with equity. Equally and with equity, be it with anyone. He takes them seriously. And he's very present in the sense that whenever he has even small time in between, he will grab that and use it in such a way that was just needed. And by that, through that, something gets accomplished, but needed to be accomplished, for which they wouldn't have time allotted. That would sometimes very likely include me holding in his hands while we're walking from one point to another. Now he will inquire, what did you do? What was that? How has the progress? Everything. And then boom, next. And he does that with so many ones. And then when he visits these places, he would have, in our own worldly sense, he would have prepared himself very well for the occasion, that he would be able to take up the table discussion like someone belonging in that community, like their history, anything, yet at the same time, touch on the very potential, important things. Practical, he will always be carrying toothpaste in his backpack. And of course, he would be brushing it before retiring to bed, which he does very early, 5, 6, 7. Then the securities are released, right? They have no job. He would say, good night at 5. Everyone beams. Likewise, in the case of other world leaders, that's when now the main thing, important thing happens, and then poor security people, they suffer a lot, right? Who knows how many hours of sleep they may get or not. So you carry that, and if I'm correct, I've heard that just as ordinarily we follow habitually, look to each other and then say, okay, the first thing I do is brush my teeth. If one has brushed at night, what is the need? You haven't eaten. There's no need. Wait for your breakfast. When you break your fast and eat, now teeth needs care, right? So every time when he has eaten, then he would go. Even visiting friends, places like that. That too, not just limited to breakfast, but after lunch, dinner. Not dinner, he doesn't have dinner, very light soups like that, even on tour. So, like that. And I heard of And that's all because for others. And he reflects that in his teachings also. Once you generate bodhicitta, for which there are signs for you to see, which I will try to relate from his own words, we maybe paraphrase a bit. He says that when you do this, then every single thing is touched with that expansiveness. With that taking care of you in those teeny tiny details, but you are, in terms of Buddhism, accumulating so much merit. You're making a big stride in your mental progression, in your mental expansion. And in terms of giving us a clue of what compassion, great compassion, about to lead to bodhicitta looks like, he quotes Lama Chuba, where there is this, in the Lamrim part of it, where when we transition to the Mahayana path, there's a reference to once you see mother sentient beings, when you draw the Uttaki Mahayana, once you reflect on how these mother sentient beings have been my mothers for repeated times, and how in all those times have been so kind. When you utter that, that should not become just mere words or maybe intellectually agreeing, but rather gives goosebumps and moves your mind to the point of tearing up. That's when you see a sign that yes, great compassion is taking root, and bodhicitta has no choice but to flower in you. And so kindness is my religion. It's not just a mere slogan, but he really meant it. And he really meant it in not in a bragging sense, but in the sense of kind of indicating us, showing us that you could also make it. In a way, whatever religion you may be following, that is possible. Because every religion speaks of love, compassion, and they are not different from kindness. We use different words. There is this another quote credited to His Holiness from his public talks and writings and whatnot, where he says, I'm paraphrasing it, I see it in people's, people's signature quotes, right? At the end of the email. Whenever possible, be kind, and it is always possible to be kind. I mean, just keep a thought about it. Are you kidding? Can we be kind all the times? Even while we are killing someone? Or even we are being victimized? Yes, to that extent, the situation would have improved, would have been lighter. And it is possible. And in some cases, that could be the only element that could totally transform the situation, totally change it to something totally unimagined. And then for the Buddhists, he calls them to be 21st century Buddhists, not just dilly-dallying Buddhists or Buddhists in just name, or Buddhists by heredity. I'm Buddhist because my parents are Buddhist. I'm Buddhist because I circumambulate. I'm Buddhist because I say the refuge prayer. Does it touch you? Right? I just say the refuge prayer or say Sangye Chosoma like that. But does it touch you? Does it mean something to you? Is it informed? To become a 21st century Buddhist, he himself has explained it at occasions needed, where he says, not just go by mere habit and culture, custom, but try to study them, understand them. And then on the basis of that understanding, try to see the significance, the value of it, and then be determined, inspired to then internalize it within oneself. So much so that he has called on various occasions all Tibetans to be possessed of all three qualities of Ke, Tsun, Sang. Kepa, expert, scholar. Tsun, I think the term may be adept or a genuine practitioner. And Sangpo, kind-hearted. In the words of Tsongkhapa himself, he captures his whole biography, autobiography in this one statement. First, I studied extensively, including reflecting, contemplating exclusively. In the meantime, then I saw each and every teaching that I studied as an instruction. As an instruction in the sense that as something that is pointing to something that I could do that could make a big difference. I could see, I can connect the dots. Now I can intellectually see how this is because of that aha kind of a moment at the intellectual level. Then at the end, day and night, I practiced them. I internalized them and I put them into practice. I made them one with my mind stream. Looking back, all has been good. So then the end is, I dedicate all of this goodness for the benefit of all sentient beings, for the Dharma to flourish. Why for the Dharma to flourish? Out of fanatism? Out of favorism? No, because now I have seen the value in my own example, in my own person. So that's how we. And likewise, Kung Tang, he explains Ke Chun Sang, be a scholar in the Buddhist studies, be a scholar, and then be someone whose mind is infused with those teachings. Then not just that, and be kind. Kind here in the sense of then dedicate that for wider good. So much so that he calls upon all Tibetans, saying that customarily, historically, we used to speak of these three qualities highly and always would confine them to some few that we could almost count on our fingers. No, this is not the time. Now we have to wake up and move with time and try and make it a vision for each and every Tibetan, and by extension, each and every sentient being, to be the repository of all those three qualities in one. And for the Tibetans, you are very well placed. You have that prospect, possibility, given the entire Kanjur and Tenju, canonical teachings of the Buddha, together with the indigenous works in Tibetan, right then and there, without having to go through any translation. And he says that everyone has that prospect, and that's what we should be looking forward to, not just be content with just having 2-3 people, or 5, 6, 10, 100 from within the whole population possessing that. In terms of his outlook, he has really grown and has become a larger than life figure. So much so that Tibetans themselves have noticed that. Now he just doesn't belong only to us. There have been such outcries. People have seen that because his attention, his focus, his concern, care goes much beyond. Of course, including the Tibetan situation, but much beyond. And along those lines goes his 4 commitments. The 4 commitments, right? And a 4th was recently added. You may have heard of 3 commitments, but 4th has been, not recently, but has been few years, he has added, where he includes making special effort in conserving, preserving, and propagating. Propagating may not be the right term, but kind of making it available for people, for everyone. The ancient Indian wisdom, not just Buddhism, but ancient Indian wisdom, including Buddhism. Particularly the wisdom dealing with mind, the education of heart and mind combined together, for which we ourselves are embedded with the facilities, almost we could say, complete within us. The potential-wise, complete. It's not that potential-wise you have half there, half not yet there. Potential-wise, we have full potential. In that, the afflictions are all just barely holding on. They can slip their grip anytime if we make an effort. And then the mind is untouched by it. And yet, in terms of the positivities that you create, which are backed by reasoning, valid reasonings, etc., support, and etc., reality, for all of those positive qualities, the mind itself, by its very nature, is so, so equipped in kind of attracting them, in kind of having them be rooted in them. That combined means, potential-wise, everyone has full potential. Right? So along those lines, he focuses more on the education of heart and the mind combined together and the possibility of that. I've heard that plannings are underway already. Some sites have already been identified in coming up with it used to be called Nalanda, but Nalanda is still very, limited way of calling it by way, in terms of the scope that is envisioned to be. So it could be called by any name which would reflect having an international, appeal and international engagement, where there would be infrastructure laid out for centuries to come. That speaks of Bodhisattva, thinking not just here and now, like Venerable has planned for 100 years, right? Likewise, His Holiness thinks of our posterity without an end. In terms of his practice of Buddhism, traditionally he is said to belong to Gelug, but he himself has very clearly, although there were earlier Dalai Lamas who were presidents of non-sectarian practice also, but this present His Holiness has specifically come out clear by saying, customarily we have two ways of pursuing the Buddhist practice. One, just not with a sectarian kind of attitude, but yet at the same time focusing just on one's own lineage and kind of practicing it purely, whereas there have been others, particularly in Eastern Tibet, more prominently in the history, more prominently represented by members from other orders than Gelug, although there were some Gelug members in that movement, in the Rime movement, which covers all the other I'm using the analogy of Rime, which covers a wide spectrum. Likewise, so His Holiness has very clearly said that historically there have been these two valid, in their own terms, on their own terms, valid way of practicing. But now it's time for each and every one of us to focus more on, to orient more towards Rime. And that he has himself done by example. And not just merely going by the motion of attending teachings, receiving teachings, but practicing them seriously. So much so that when he teaches on them, I have asked friends from other orders, how does it sound? Does he get, did he get it? They say, wow, kasawi. They really go, wow, kasawe, wow. I mean, they haven't heard that deep, even from their own masters. And then he's cross-checking with others. It would be wonderful when he speaks Tibetan. His Tibetan is extraordinary Tibetan, accessible to everyone, yet at the same time so rich, and so goes with his Dharma teachings. And in his Dharma teaching, it is quite apparent that when he teaches, it's not just teaching from the text. He's teaching from his own examples. And has been also sharing his examples over the years with specific purpose in mind, I think. Because when we look back, he would say, for a while, when I was 30, 40, I was drawn towards emptiness and felt very interested in it and was very hopeful that if only I could have a little more time than being very busy with other responsibilities, I could get it. And pursuing it, I could get arhatship and can look for a big, peaceful slumber. Rest. But then later, few years later, and in his 40s and 50s, he developed interest in bodhicitta, and which he earlier thought was wonderful, yet out of reach. But then he didn't leave it there. He kept on looking into it, inquiring, studying, and then eventually, now he says that even that is within his reach, or that he has. It will depend to what audience he may be speaking. To some, when he feels okay to share, he does share. But irrespective of whether he shares it verbally or not, through his actions, it will be very, very apparent. As I was saying earlier, during tours, even tours with those hectic engagements are no exceptions. He will rise up at 3:30, does his exercise, and also he's taking care of himself for the sake of other sentient beings. Because someone doing the highest yoga tantra practice, rising up, you do not rise up ordinarily, like that. No, you rise up within the Deche Ngangle, right? Deche Ngangle, within the mode of being immersed in great bliss and the wisdom, or the wisdom of great bliss. That's where you would have left when going into sleep, by dissolving everything into it. Then you go into your sleep, the whole span of sleep in that, and you when you wake up, you just pick up from there. You pick up from there. And that Techen that blissful wisdom is imbued with bodhicitta. On top of being wisdom expressed through no other means but the subtlest clear light mind that is infused and rooted in bodhicitta. And then everything he does is conjoined with that. And so up to 8 o'clock, it would be his time for himself. After 8, by that time he would have had his breakfast. He gives up. He gives himself up to others, fully, joyously. Wow. He's present. And he's so present. He's so present. Whoever you may be speaking to, so speaking with, he'll be there, looking into their eyes, and he'll be focused there. And then all of a sudden, when he needs, he will be again present there. Sometimes he's so present that he's caring about us when we happen to be standing, because of the duty, having to be standing by him and kind of getting ready to supposedly prompt him with some words or whatnot, which I didn't do. I don't claim to have done well at all. But he would be his mindfulness will extend to us, saying, "Oh, be mindful. You have mic on your on you. Don't walk away like this." There's this mindfulness on him, on his actions, etc., and of the entire environment, it seems like. So by 21st century Buddhist, he himself explained it. Sometimes people say, "Oh, how can you be a 21st century Buddhist? Oh, you have to know 20 languages, science, all of those, including Buddhism." People would kind of, what do you call, interpret it like that. No. I said, I used to question that. No, this cannot be the right interpretation. 21st Buddhist can be, one can be 21st Buddhist, and what he's calling for is, in his own words, be an informed Buddhist. Informed in terms of really how things work. What's the mental mechanism, the working of the mechanism. In modern terms, in his own words, try to get a map of mind. Get a map of mind. Get to know which dot join connects with what, and how to make it the sophisticated, what you call, development, what. So in those words, it captures very clearly. And see, I'm going all over. Yes, I was speaking of his vision extending beyond Tibetans, and which is very clear in his first two of the, in a way, in all of his four commitments, but more specifically, more pronouncedly in his first two of the commitments. One is religious harmony, that he really meant it and he has really exercised it to the extent that now he has more genuine friends from other religions than from Buddhism itself. Although it is improving now. It has really improved over years. It's amazing. Now, these days, when he teaches, it's like so many different colors of audience members, which didn't used to be the case. Let alone that, you would only find Gelupas, no others. Right? And then he has genuine friends from other religions. So much so that they really, I mean, you all know, they really kind of, in ordinary terms, love each other. Just think of the late Bishop Tutu. Wow. When they are together, it's like two kids, really having great fun, connecting, and agreeing to disagree with so much ease. Wow, it shows like we all have the potentials, no matter where we may have come from Tibet or from Africa or from anywhere. And then in this regard, he has even written several books, really laying out the mechanisms, really laying out the steps by which one could genuinely, without having to compromise one's own religion, but genuinely develop appreciation and respect to each other. And that's only sustaining and supporting what one's own religion teaches. And then comes the first commitment, promoting human values. That's where he goes beyond religion, saying not everyone is religious, everyone professes religion. There are people who not only are not professing religion, but even entire religion. At one point, I was given the responsibility to look into the possibilities of how to bring about His Holiness's vision of the so-called secular ethics into some kind of a concrete plan. And I was researching, and I saw secular ethics, the term secular ethics being used a very long time ago, but in so many different contexts. In some contexts, it meant multi-religion. People say they're doing secular ethics. What they're actually doing is drawing from all different religions, the good points together. There are even books under that name. And in other cases, particularly in school sessions, school settings, they have sessions called secular ethics or secular ethics class. What it is an alternative to religion. But then there are others who are anti-religion, who call their stand as secular ethics. They do not shun ethics because they have to present, or maybe they really feel that there has to be some principle, some value there, but not to religion. Instead, religion is a heart. So they take that stand. So I found that quite interesting. Yet at the same time, I had to kind of had the opportunity of working continuously on that, and it always took quite a while, quite a task to explain what secular means in this context in the first place before moving forward. In any case, now it has been transformed into another name with the consent of His Holiness himself. He has no attachment to the name. Otherwise, that would have been his signature term for this kind of education, right? And the world UNO has, in one of the years, in its happiness report, has quoted His Holiness and said that this is the way to go about, calling it secular ethics. But when we found unnecessary resentment, hesitation from educationists in calling it that way, we changed it we were first calling it secular ethics in education. Secular ethics in education, C. Now we are calling it C learning, but the acronym means different. Social, emotional, ethical learning. And it has become so popular and so widespread. Now it is being researched on, taught in different schools across the globe, in Asia's, of course, but also in Latin America's. And there have been some interest from Africa and other countries also. So that's a clear indication of where his vision and concern is going towards the entire humanity. He would sometimes say that, yes, we do, as Buddhists, we always pray for all sentient beings, but beings from the other planets, we only can imagine and can't do much. The beings of this planet, the animals, there's not so much we can do. And I've even heard a story someone shared with me that when he saw deer with its fawn curve running past one of his rooms while he was traveling, he shed tears, thinking of how on their own they are, protectorless, surrounded by dangers every moment, yet caring, and the bond between the two. Likewise, His Holiness has been seen shedding tears whenever he invokes sentient beings. And that's exactly what he was touching on when he says that when you have that kind of experience at that point of the Lama Sherpa, where you recall the kind of sentient beings, that goosebumps arise and mind is moved to almost tear, that you have now signs of great compassion taking root. He's explaining from his own experience. Now, I will share a few fun here, some mistakes that you may be, there must be so many. I mean, someone should be doing a research and collecting this. I hope so. at one point I thought I would, and even ask for grant to be able to travel. I was even imagining traveling different places with this modern scholar-like mission of doing research on his so-called, his what might be called what do you call secret biography or mystical biography. I hope someone may be doing it. I hope so. It cannot be too late before we lose many people who knows about them. So let me share with you something. That was in Varanasi Institute, where the Vice Chancellor is very good friend of Kashi King. Kashi is the local locality, old, which used to be a kingdom of its own, but still the heredity carries on with the government subsidiary assistance. But the king was getting old and he was not having heirs. So when His Holiness was visiting Varanasi school, the Vice Chancellor had invited Kashi King, which we used to do quite often. We have a very good relationship. So at that time, he made a special request first to the Vice Chancellor. Could you please bring this to His Holiness's attention? Could he do something? Could I have a son? He didn't say sons. He said, could I have just one son? And somehow they could not set up a separate meeting, like so-called meeting with the king of Kashi forward, right? But he did manage to bring it up to His Holiness before the function started, and His Holiness kind of listened to it and didn't respond anything, didn't do anything. And then the whole function was finished, everything. And as he was passing by, he deliberately stopped at Kashi King, held his hand, said, don't worry, everything will be fine. The family had twins. Now, people who are skeptical would call it just mere coincidence. But even coincidences, the so-called coincidences, should have causal conditions. Otherwise, you will be equating with coming from nowhere. If you are that dumb, right, to accept that, and if something can come from nowhere, then be it so. Otherwise, even the so-called coincidence should have causal conditions, although we may not be able to locate what was the cause at that time. Okay, now bringing some episode closer to home. Take the example of Paul Ekman. You may have heard about him, right? Paul Ekman, a very famous American scholar, expert, researcher on the question of emotion. And he is said to have, Paul Ekman, and he is said to have developed this, although it's a little controversial, not so accepted by everyone, this, this method of detecting whether you are lying or not through the movements of the facial muscles, right, like that, etc. In some prison systems, this is used. Anyway, he's a huge name, and the American government kind of provides grants for its work, and he has such a standing in the world of emotions, in the world of the science of emotions. So, but he was known to be expert in emotion, but at the same time, such an expert in anger, in being captured by anger. He's such an angry person, so expert on emotions, including anger, yet subject to anger himself every now and then. So much so that the families were so worried about it. Somehow it happened that in one of the course of Mind and Life, he happened to be called to present. That was first ever time that he had anything to do with the Dalai Lama, right? He would be just going there as a totally stranger, knew yet an expert, and he would present it. In the course of the presentation, I think maybe during the tea break or whatnot, something happened. His Holiness touched his hand, and something happened. He explains his sensations going through his body. A scientist, if he exposes such things, his career is at risk. His grant may be cut off, right? But he experienced it and could not keep it to himself. It has shared it in one of his books. The title of the book, it has something to do with emotion, but I don't know. I haven't. This time I prepared not by checking any website, nothing. So that's why I have to paraphrase, right? So see, just look, it's just a mess. Just a mess, just a catawampus out of which I'm trying to create peace in my presentation of such, he flew like this, like this. But he is catawampus here. So, not just that. He shared it. 2-3 years ago, there was a Mind and Life something, 7 days of online program on so many different disciplines. Yeah, I particularly looked for Paul Ekman. And his team now includes his daughter, I think, Eva Ekman, who is carrying on his work. He's now retired. And she would prompt him, Dad, you had something to share. Can you? Then he shares it live. He became a changed person. Now don't ask me, how could anger go without the person himself or herself intentionally cultivating antidote? Something changed. He became such a changed person that next time when he happened to come to a Mind and Life, he had, I think maybe next time, or I don't know, when he had, or maybe during the very first time also, he could bring his daughter with him. Somehow, I was in one of the Mind and Life conference when he was there. He conveyed the message from his wife to His Holiness the Dalai Lama, thanking him for making him a changed person. My family has changed. And this same similar thing happened with an Indian industrialist in Delhi. So much so that he could not drive himself to home, had to hire an Uber. And then once he reached his home, he asked his wife, everyone, please don't touch. Almost like any touch will soil it or disturb it. Just give me some time to myself. He went into some quiet time. Can really, what do you call? Really, in ordinary terms, really enjoyed it. Really kind of felt it, kind of held on to that. And there are others. One to do with Geshe Jimpa, one to do with Bobby Sagar, but there's not much time. Yeah, okay. I was waiting for that. That was the reason why I was seen. What should I do? Thank you. So lunch will be tomorrow, okay? Thank you so very much once again. See how much I have healed. Right? I'm always coming back to my own old funny self. All thanks to Venerable for open-hearted invitation and generosity. Yes, I was in Atlanta. There was this sea learning workshop going on. Tupten Jimba's wife, Sophie came along with her colleague. She is involved in a similar education program dealing with emotions, where by the way, she is from Canada, and they live in Montreal, and their work has to deal with identifying emotions for very small kids, and kind of see whether they can identify them correctly or not. If so, then connect it with either a need that is not being felt or want that doesn't need to be necessarily felt, what's happening, so that they could kind of at least at their level handle it in some way and understand it and kind of deal with it. So she was there as part of the workshop, and she presented her work. And in the evening, at that time, I usually very close by my work. I was it's just 2 minutes walk from where I live, my workplace. And then it is just straight away connected to a park called Lal Water Preserve, to a park. So she was accommodated at the Emory Conference Center, which is very nearby, which is just even nearer to my workplace. So in the evening, I offered her, because it has been a long day, sitting, talking, discussing. Although there were some I don't know what you call them, skits or some kind of things where you play, right? But mostly it was sitting and listening. So going on and on like that. So I offered her a walk, because she wouldn't know any place, right? I said, it's just nearby where you are, just there, connecting it, virtually connecting that hotel days. And I asked her about her health, and then about our plans. She said, oh, we were planning to go to Ladakh together with a family neighbor, a couple, so 4 or 5 of them, not their kids, I think, maybe. And we had booked, everything is fixed now. It is just a matter of waiting for the flight date to come. And all of a sudden, they received a message from His Holiness's office saying, Jimpa must come. Must come. Must come. Right? I wish I could. There's no room for that. Must come. So he had to go. They discussed among themselves. He had to go. And they had to cancel their trip. Jimpa was there in Delhi, in Dharamsala, had some work done and come back. That's when the very damaging flood happened. If they had gone, they would have been in that flood. Because their place where they were going is exactly there, which was completely ruined. Again, some people may say, oh, is His Holiness partial? Is he like His Holiness, like all the Buddhas? His Holiness is also not partial. He has compassion, and that too, compassion ever ready. It's like sun ever radiating the lights. Not like it takes back and the way, so someone, oh, somebody has come, okay, some light there. Oh, someone has come out, has gone in, okay, so now some light. Not like that. It's just freely, right, radiating. So is the case with the Buddhas. Likewise, we imagine that to be like that of His Holiness. But, so that means, on their part, usually in Buddhism we speak of Buddhas being omnipresent, omniscient, but not omnipotent. But in Tibetan we speak of Khenche Nu. Nu means power. Even power-wise also, on their side, there is nothing incomplete in there. Nothing incomplete, except it has to connect with people's conditions. We have to have the conditions ready. Otherwise, conditions or the causes. We have to have our causes ready. Otherwise, conditions from the Buddhas are ever present. In that sense, that power is ever present and complete and full. Khenze Nusum. Not just Khenpa and Tsewa. Khenpa is omniscient. Tsewa is omnikind, what do you call? Yeah, compassion. Yeah, but going to all, right? But omnipresent, we don't include in that category, but we say because of the subtlest light, subtlest energy being subtle energy and the subtlest light being the only needed and fully functional what do you call energy in them. So the clear-led mind has now a reason awakened into an actively what do you call engaging mind. In Tibetan we call it Yu Jerungi Namba. It's so interesting. Yu Jerungi Namba, something that responds to objects. Until then, in our case, it's just dormant. No matter whatever comes around it or even bangs on it, it doesn't budge. But at that level, that's the only energy active, and that is fully functional. And in that term, there's no idea, no notion of anything obstructing it. Whatever object it is seeing, which is what it is seeing every time, it is there with the object. So omnipresent. But also, we will not call omnipotent, but omnipowerful. In the sense that from their part, there's no such thing as lacking in power, lacking in the capacity, fully capable, be that in terms of compassion, wisdom, everything. So that's like sun. Sun with its ray exemplify, likened to its activities, ever going in all directions. Sun doesn't go into sleep at night. It's still, right? Okay. Anyway, so what? Yeah. So again, we might say, oh, that's just coincidence. Oh, maybe somebody says, oh, is His Holiness being biased? This I heard from Sophie herself. And the Paul Ekman is written now. It's on record in his book, and in life he shared it. Being a scientist, but writing a book was quite early, but sharing this was after he had retired. But he was still considered a scientist now. Where would he fit, right? With that kind of a mentality, or with that kind of a firm, undeniable, unshakable experience. And that's being genuine scientist, being really sincere. So, so the first commitment about the universal values in terms of promoting universal value, not touching the religion. In that respect, he has written these two main books one called the Ethics for the New Millennium, other called Beyond Religion, saying that everyone needs to have access to love, compassion, and basic human values, not confined to religion. And the only effective way of presenting that, bringing it and spreading it, and eventually covering the entire globe will be by bringing primarily in the education system. Although this could be practiced and must be practiced in all other sections. And this has full open room for any wisdom, any like same potential wisdom, which doesn't need to bring religion into play, yet at the same time promotes this capacity of ours into positive. With this, I stop here, and thanks again for the opportunity, and once again, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude. Yes, thinking back, I've been really, really, really very, very fortunate in having not only be walking on the globe together with His Holiness by having had such connection, and I also still continue to do so. Likewise, so many of you, and through you, so many others, we must recognize this fortune and should not let it slip by, but rather make the most out of it, so that we'll be able to continue to maintain this connection and benefit through lives until we attain our full awakening. So, quoting His Holiness's own very favorite prayer, for as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, may Your Holiness also remain in the midst of us, in dispelling our sufferings and miseries, as well as showing us the path, guiding us along it until the full awakening. Thank you.